Hello everyone, I'm Sebastian Y, and this is Managerial Economics. In this video, I'm going to talk about cross-price and income elasticity, as well as a few applications for elasticity. Remember that the demand for a good can depend on the prices of other goods, not just the price of the good itself. In our example, we talked about how the price of wine has an impact on the demand for beer. Mathematically, we define the cross-price elasticity quite similarly to the own price, with one key difference. It's the percent change in the quantity of one good demanded, say X, divided by the percent change in a different good's price, which we'll call good Y. In the last video, I went through some algebra with the own price elasticity to show how there are two different ways that we can think about calculating the price elasticity. We can do the same thing here, but since I've already shown the steps, I'm going to skip right to that. The partial derivative of the demand function with respect to, this time, the price of y instead of x, times price of y divided by the current quantity of x. This looks very similar to the own price elasticity, except it's price of y instead of price of x. I should emphasize right now that these two formulations are exactly the same thing. They're just two different ways to calculate it depending on the situation we're in. If what we have is percentage changes, we can use the first one. If what we have is just a demand function, we use the second one. One big difference here between cross-price and own price elasticity is there's no more law of demand. It's not a sure thing what the sign of this derivative is going to be. Py and qx are always going to be positive. That's not in doubt. It's just this derivative part. If the goods are substitutes, this thing is going to be positive. If they're complements, it's going to be negative. And that's going to make the entire elasticity either positive or negative. So if our cross-price elasticity is positive or greater than 0, we have substitutes. If it's less than 0, we have complements. Let's look at a quick example using our beer demand function. To figure out the cross-price elasticity, we're going to need to get the partial derivative with respect to the price of wine this time, since that is our other good here. Again, this is quite simple to do because there's no PW in this whole first part of the equation, so none of that is going to matter. It's all going to drop out in the partial derivative. The partial derivative with respect to PW here is going to be 2. We now multiply that by our current price of wine divided by the quantity of beer. Suppose those are 50 and 400, which are the values we used a few videos ago. And so what we're going to end up with is 100 over 400, which is 1/4. This is positive, which tells us that beer and wine are substitutes, which should make sense. Next, we are going to talk about income elasticity. Income elasticity is defined very similarly to all the other ones. It's the percent change in the quantity demanded divided by percent change in income. Remember, we are going to use the variable m to denote consumer income. Likewise, we can do the same algebra steps, which I am again going to omit here. The partial of the demand function with respect to m times the current income divided by the current level of x. Income and quantity have got to be positive, and so again, the sign of this thing is determined by the sign of this partial derivative. This thing could be positive or negative depending on whether we have a normal or inferior good. And so if our income elasticity is positive, then we have a normal good. If it is negative, we have an inferior good. Note that with cross-price and income elasticity, the thing we really care about is positive or negative, whereas with own price elasticity, we didn't talk about this because we knew it had to be negative. Over there, what we're more interested in is comparing it with 1 to figure out if it's elastic or inelastic. We can do the same thing here, but the positive or negative is the interesting part. Let's do a quick example with our beer demand function. To do the income elasticity, we need to take the partial with respect to income, Again, all of this stuff drops out except the m term, so we get 4. And so for our elasticity, we get 4 times the current income divided by the current quantity. We'll use the values we used before, which were 65 and 400. What we get is 260 over 400, which is 13 over 20. This is positive, which tells us that beer is a normal good. The last thing we're going to do is apply elasticity to do some simple calculations. Suppose we knew that the price elasticity of demand is -2, and a manager has the goal of increasing the quantity demanded by 10%. The question is, how much would they have to change the price to accomplish this goal? We can use the price elasticity equation to do this. Remember that we have price elasticity of demand equals the percent change in the quantity demanded divided by the percent change in the price. So to do that, we can plug in -2 and we can plug in 10% and use that to back out what the percent change in price would have to be. Since there are 3 things in this equation, and if we know 2 of them, we can always figure out the one that's remaining. I'll multiply both sides by percent change in price, so I'll get -2% change in price equals 10%. Divide both sides by 2, and that's going to give me percent change in price is -5%. And so what this tells us is that our manager, if they want to increase quantity demanded by 10%, they're going to need to decrease the price by 5%. Let's do one more. Suppose we know that the income elasticity of demand is 0.2. Now suppose we think that the percent change of income is going to be 10%. That is, we expect that income is about to go up by about 10%. We want to know what's going to happen to the sales of the product, and so we can plug all these in to the elasticity equation. We don't know what our percent change in the quantity demanded is, but we know that the income is changing by 10%. Multiply both sides by 10%, and we would get percent change in quantity demanded will be 2%. When the income goes up by 10%, we expect the quantity demanded to go up by 2%. And that is it for elasticity and our material for this week. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Thanks for watching.